Welcome to another Boss United FM Football Manager experiment. This video brings together the current and recent past of Boss United as we look to see how a dream team of still active players can tackle the Conference North. The squad chosen, based on current ability and only including players permanently attached to the club at any time, is Peter Crook and Henrich Ravas are the goalkeepers. In defence, James Clifton, Scott Garner, Jordan Keane, Zach Mills, Shaun Pearson, Piergianni, Luke Shiels, Rene and Alex Whittle. Midfielders, Brad Abbott, Liam Agnew, Anthony Church, Kaine Felix, Ash Hemmings, Grant Roberts, James Rollins, Andi Thanoj and Nicky Walker. And then up top, Ricky Miller, Dayle Southwell, Jordan Thewlis and Kabongo Tshimanga. It should be a very strong set of players. Can they win the league at the first attempt? Will Craig Elliott look to replace any of them? How long will the now high division players stay? Let's find out. Okay, let's have a look at the current situation, as in 10 years in the future. So, they've finished second in the Vanarama National League. We'll check and see how they've got on in this most recent season shortly. But just looking at the graph, looks like they did win the league first season and have stayed up ever since. Rising to 13th, 6th, 14th, 16th, 10th, 14th, another 16th, and then 12th, and then followed by the second place this season. If we take a look at that in the form here, so yeah, just confirms it. So that first season, 91 points from 42 games, 28 victories, very good defensive record, very successful first season. Turns out the dream team is a very, very good Conference North team and have then held their own in the Vanarama National, depending on how many players have left the club and how many new players have come in. But you would hope with the initial squad of 24 that at least most of them would stay. Let's have a check of the managers. So Craig Elliott in from the start, he lasted until October 2020, so he only lasted that first full season and then through to October of the following season. He was then replaced by Gary Waddock, who lasted almost 2 years. Then Shay Logan, who lasted 3 years. Then Jake Wigley, less than a year. And then Duncan Fernhead has lasted almost 3 years and is still in the job. What we can have a look at in a second, we'll look through the fixtures for each season and we'll see why Craig Elliott got the boot. But let's have a look at the current squad, just in case, on the off chance anybody is still left. But it doesn't look like it. No. Interestingly, there's someone called Stephen Evans who's up front. Michel, an 18-year-old in the midfield, or is he a striker? An attacking midfielder. Kieran Tierney, not the Kieran Tierney, someone who's come through the Scunthorpe Academy. Okay, well, I think the thing to look at first is how they got on. And there we go. Beating Harrogate in the playoff final at Wembley, 2-0. Can we check the details? We can. And Stephen Evans scores alongside James Cook. If we look at the round, so if we go semi-final, beating Chorley in the semi-finals, that's getting a bit of a hoodoo out of the way. Harrogate beating Bromley. But yeah, finishing second behind Hereford, 15 points behind Hereford. And then on goal difference from Bromley. Okay, let's have a look at some fixtures. What we'll do, we'll go right back to the start. So the very first season, started off with a couple of defeats, so didn't really start very well. But important wins against York and Kings Lynn pretty early on. Long unbeaten record through until losing to Peterborough in the FA Cup second round. Bit of a wobble in the league, going out of the trophy as well, but then coming back to have a very good January and February. A couple of defeats in March, but then winning the league sometime in April, you would assume, if we can actually look at that season. If we go through to the league table, winning the league by 10 points from Chester. Then we can see the defeats and the victories. See who they scored the goals against. Not scoring more than 5 goals against any team across the season, but it doesn't matter if you win the league. As Hereford and Curzon get relegated out. That's interesting how Hereford start with a relegation, but then in the most recent season they win the Vanarama National. Okay, if we go through and we'll just check and see why Craig Elliott got the boot. So it was around this time in October, losing to Barnet and Torquay. It's not a very good start to the season, but they did finish mid-table. A few more victories in the second half of the season. So we go through, just checking out. Do seem to have the odd bad patch every year, which has pretty much cost them a playoff place in each of them. Too many red dots. Bad end to the season there. As we slowly get towards the present day. Very good November there, winning every game, but then a horrible January. And then a horrible end of the season run in. There, another poor start, poor middle. You can see why they've been through a few managers, but then it's the most recent season where even then it's not an amazing season all the way through. If you check the start, 4 games without a win at the start, another 5 there. Too many draws around like December time, but then the victories start coming after Christmas. A little bit inconsistent throughout March, but then that running at the end from the 30th of March onwards, from Good Friday 2029, winning every game right through to the end of the season, which included the playoff final at Wembley. If we check, 38,000 there. Okay, so let's have a look at some transfers. If we go for transfer history, we'll go through to the first season. So nobody went out. There was a handful of players coming in, mainly loans, like Musa Niakate, the only free transfer coming in, but nobody went out, so that's a good sign. Some youngster, I assume, that went out that season. So Adam Boys has returned to the club. If we go down, is there anybody else who's come in? Daniel Udo, I believe he's a former Telford player. Still nobody going out, but we'll have a look at the release list soon. Just looking at if there's anybody of any note coming in. Doesn't look like it at the moment. With having such a good first season, there is always the possibility of players being sold for a transfer fee, but it doesn't look like it's happened. But let's carry on looking through some players coming in. Still nobody of note gone out. But I would assume they've come to the end of their contracts and literally just left the club. So that's when Stephen Evans came in on a free transfer. Where did he come from? So he started at West Brom, went over to Barnsley, spent many a loan spell in the Vanarama National before Boston picked him up. And he scored 12 goals in the promotion season. Okay, let's go back to that original season. Let's go for released players. Here we go. Quite a few players got released, like Grant Roberts, James Clifton, Alex Whittle, Liam Agnew, Scott Garner, Rene Steer, Jordan Thewlis, Andi Thanoj, Nicky Walker, Brad Abbott, Anthony Church, Ricky Miller, Luke Shiels, Keane, Felix and Jay Rollins. If we have a look, see which ones we can still click on. So you've got Rene Steer, so he's now Chief Scout at Blythe Spartans. If we have a look at his milestones, so he has been around a little bit since leaving Boston, so he left. He then went to Brackley, Dorking, Eastleigh, and then has become a scout for Matlock and Blythe. If we have a look at anybody else who's stayed in football, so Luke Shiels, who's now under 23s manager at Nuneaton Borough. If we have a look at his milestones, so after leaving Boston he went over to Eastleigh, then Welling, and then as at Nuneaton has been basically a youth team manager. Whether he's now combining the two roles, I'm not sure. So we scoop forward. So Ash Hemmings left a couple of years in, same with Jordan Keane, Kabongo Tshimanga. Then Adam Boyes left the club. Dayle Southwell left in 2022. Same with Shaun Pearson. And if any of them extended their contract. So Henrich Ravas lasted until 2023. So we click through. I would imagine that is it. Oh, Pete Crook lasted until 2025. He's still clickable. He's an unemployed scout. Have a look at his milestones. So he left Boston and he joined Hereford for a couple of years. Interesting how Hereford, they do seem to have been a little bit up and down. So they started off with that relegation, but then in the Vanarama North finished 4th, 2nd, then 1st, 12th in the National, then winning the Vanarama National, finishing bottom of League 2, then 2nd in the Vanarama National, and then have just won the league. So they've basically been at quite a few levels. There's Carl Piergianni leaving in 2025. Has anybody lasted a long while? So Zach Mills lasted until 2027 when he retired, but apparently is still active in the game. He's an unemployed head of youth development and has been since he left Boston a couple of years ago in game. See if there's anybody else as we now skip through to the most recent season. No, that does seem to be it. Have to say it's been very successful for Boston on the pitch overall. If we take a look at the graph again, after that first promotion in the first season, fairly mid-table for what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the seasons. They had that one where they reached the playoffs in 21-22. Let's have a look and see how they got on. Losing in the first round of the playoffs to Fylde away 2-1. But there does seem to have been a bit of a regeneration in this most recent season, finishing 2nd. And there we have it. Promotion from the National League into League 2 for 29-30. Thank you very much for watching.